All right, welcome to today's webinar on 6 use cases to transform your integration strategy. My name is Marcus Edgington. I'm the VP of Product at Prismatic, and I'm excited to share some insights with you all today on the topic of product integrations. Before we dive in, I want to say a big thanks to Product School for hosting this webinar. Prismatic and Product School have been partnering together for a while now, and I'm happy to be able to contribute and add to the wealth of resources that you provide. During this session, I'm going to be talking primarily to those of you working at B2B SaaS companies. I'm going to be covering 6 business use cases, or essentially approaches, for leveling up your current product integration strategy. And by product integrations, I'm referring to integrations that you're building for your customers. These integrations connect your product to the other products that your customers are using. Before coming to Prismatic, I was a product manager for several B2B software companies that relied heavily on product integrations to support the capabilities of their core product offerings. From those past experiences and my experiences working with several other B2B companies while at Prismatic, I've been able to get a pretty good feel for what works well and what doesn't when it comes to strategies for building, deploying, and maintaining product integrations. I also know from experience that implementing a solid integration strategy and tooling can be really difficult, especially if you're trying to build it yourself from the ground up. That's the primary reason I wanted to join Prismatic. At Prismatic, we're 100% focused on helping B2B companies build scalable integration platforms. So I encourage you guys to take a look into products like Prismatic, which can accelerate the transformation of your integration strategy. But today I'll talk about the approaches you should take to make that happen, regardless of whether you choose to use products like Prismatic or implement a more homegrown solution. So before we get into some of the details, I wanted to reinforce the importance of a solid integration or a solid integration strategy and why you care about it. Your application is one of many applications that your customers are using. Surveys have shown that the average mid-market company is using over 100 software applications in their daily operations. For any of you that have attended my webinars before, you've heard me say this, but that number, it blew me away the first time I heard it. And to be honest, I was pretty skeptical of that stat. But when you actually stop and think about all the software applications that you personally use on a daily basis, it starts to add up quickly. In addition to those applications, there's all the other applications that are being used by other groups in your company. There's probably many of them that you don't even know about. So most companies want many of those applications that they're regularly using to be connected so that there's data consistency across their software ecosystems. They also want to eliminate dual entry and decrease the amount of time that their employees need to spend bouncing around between multiple applications. So for these reasons, if you're a B2B SaaS vendor, it's likely that your customers are expecting your product to integrate with at least one of those many other software applications that they're using. So for many years, offering up a robust API was the way to go. It was the answer for vendors that wanted to enable their customers to connect their application to the other applications in their software ecosystem. But that's no longer enough. Customers are now expecting their SaaS vendors to also provide many integrations as essentially out-of-the-box functionality, rather than something that they have to build on their own. So for some of you listening, integrations are more than just a convenience for your customers. You may be building SaaS products that rely on receiving data from one of those other products to power your product. So for those of you, integrations are a necessity. Without them, your products just don't work. AI-focused applications are becoming more common than ever, and they're probably the best example of those types of applications that just 100% depend on integrations to power their product. So because these integrations are so important, your customers are thinking about them from the time that they start evaluating products. So what we're looking at right now is a report from G2 that shows top buyer criteria for multiple product types. Take a note that if you're selling into customer service, sales, or marketing teams, integrations are going to be your buyer's top concern. Even if you're not selling into those areas, it is near the top as far as considerations go. And this research is reinforcing that without integrations, you may not even be getting in the door with your prospects. So integrations are obviously important to your customers. So I'm going to talk about a handful of things that you should be focusing on when transforming your integration strategy to make sure that you're meeting your customers' integration expectations in a way that can scale as your company grows. So there's 6 of them. Let's get started with shipping your integrations fast. Any good integration strategy should include a plan or ways for shipping integrations as quickly as possible. Doing so not only benefits your customers, but it's also going to be a benefit to your organization. One of the biggest benefits of being able to ship integrations quickly is the ability to get fast and frequent feedback from your customers. I always like to say that you should treat the planning and building of integrations just like you would treat your core features of your product. And shipping quickly is a perfect example of that. Integrations are just like product features in that there's a never-ending list of edge cases you should account for or could account for. If you can ship fast and often, you're in a better position to start with an MVP and then figure out which of those edge cases are actually important to your customers based on their feedback, and then release updates to those integrations as you get that feedback. Shipping integrations quickly not only improves the quality of your integrations, but it's also going to improve the overall quality of your core product. If you're spending a ton of time on building integrations, it probably means you're not spending as much time as you could on your core product. In a prior role, I worked for a B2B company where it wasn't uncommon for us to spend 50% or more of our dev time in a given dev cycle working on integrations. As a product manager, you have a never-ending list of things you'd like to do in your product, and not getting to some of them because integrations are dragging on and on can be discouraging, to say the least. And perhaps the most obvious reason for shipping quickly is that it allows you to offer more integrations to your customers in a shorter period of time. You're never going to hear a customer say, hey, you guys have too many integrations. And in a highly competitive and crowded product categories, you're always looking for ways to stand out from your competitors. Offering lots of integrations may be the way to do that. You're gonna get integration requests from your customers all the time. And if you know that building an integration is not going to take a ton of time, it's a lot easier to say yes to those requests. Saying yes to existing customers is great, but saying yes to prospects can even be more beneficial. If you got a big deal on the line and a particular integration that's a must-have for them, it's a lot easier to be confident that you can move that integration up the priority list if you know that you can build and ship that integration quickly. All right, number 2 on the list of ways to transform your integration strategy is reusability and self-service. At Prismatic, we refer to this as building integrations with a productized model. The opposite of a productized model is a services model. In the services model, you typically build a custom integration for a specific customer. Let's call them customer X, and then you enable it for them. Then, when customer Y comes along and needs a slightly different version, you create a whole new integration with some minor tweaks. While this might work for a small number of customers and integrations, it quickly becomes unsustainable as your customer base grows and your list of integration offerings grows. With the productized model, the goal is to build an integration once and deploy it to many customers by applying configuration that's unique to those customers rather than building a whole new integration. With this, with the reusable integrations, customer success or implementation teams could apply the configuration for your customers, but the best approach is a marketplace type of experience where your customers can enable and configure those integrations themselves. We call the combination of integration reusability with self-service the productized model, because you're building and deploying integrations like the rest of your product. This benefits your company because managing productized integrations is much more sustainable than the services model. With this approach, you're going to maintain a single source integration, and then if an enhancement or fix is needed to that integration, you only need to update that integration once. And all of your customers that have enabled this integration benefit from that update. When using an integration marketplace, you're also decreasing the amount of hand-holding required by your customer success team for both implementation and support. And from your customer's perspective, not only are they going to get a more reliable and up-to-date integration, but they're also going to be more satisfied with your product if they're able to enable and configure these integrations themselves rather than waiting for your support staff. All right, in a perfect world, all of your integrations would be reusable, and you'd never have to build integrations that are specific to a customer. But most B2B companies live in the real world. For example, there are B2B companies that are entirely focused on a handful of large enterprise customers, and customization is it's a key part of their product strategy. So in that case, customer unique integrations may make up the majority of integrations for those types of companies. However, for most B2B companies, the best integration strategy is one that leans heavily into the productized model, but it's still flexible enough to implement bespoke integrations when it makes sense. The most common example of this is when a customer has very specific logic that can't be handled by configuration alone. So in this situation, it may make sense or may make strategic sense to build bespoke integrations for some of those customers. There may also be times when a customer needs an integration to a third-party product that is unlikely to ever be used by another customer. In that case, we'd still call that a bespoke integration. So with that said, there's definitely a right way to implement these types of integrations. So when done correctly, you should be able to reuse much of the same logic or functions that you're already using in your productized integrations. Your dev team should be able to update the shared logic and push those changes to both your productized and bespoke integrations. A good example of this is what we call application connectors here at Prismatic. These connectors contain all of the logic needed to authenticate and communicate with a third-party API. And both your productized and bespoke integrations for a given third-party product are going to leverage much of the same connector logic. For example, let's say you're building a productized integration between your product and Salesforce that regularly syncs contacts. You also have, along with that, a handful of bespoke Salesforce integrations that are doing some unique things. But in that case, both the productized and bespoke integrations are going to use the same Salesforce connector. So in addition to reusing logic, your customer success team should be able to support these bespoke integrations right alongside any of your productized integrations. In addition, not only should your support team have a consistent experience, but your customer should as well. From their perspective, enabling and viewing the status of bespoke integrations shouldn't look or feel any different than it would for a productized integration. So another way you can handle bespoke integrations is by giving your customers tools to easily build their own integrations or customize existing integrations. A great way to do this is by embedding a low-code integration workflow builder directly within your product. A workflow builder gives your customers the same flexibility that would normally come from a customer-facing API, but it's going to allow less technical users to quickly build or update or modify integrations themselves. For many B2B companies, it's going to make sense to offer the integration marketplace along with this workflow builder concept. With this approach, your customers are going to use the marketplace to enable integrations for the most common third-party applications, but then they're going to reach for the designer to bridge any gaps that exist in your marketplace. But B2B companies that implement a workflow builder are going to have a convenient answer for customers that want to build that custom logic that I talked about, or maybe they want an integration to your product that you haven't got around to, or maybe it's an integration that you have no intention to building because it's just not widely requested. So the builder is going to allow your company to focus on the integrations that make the most sense for the broader customer base, which keeps your integration roadmap a lot more sane. So earlier I mentioned that having lots of integrations can be a competitive advantage. Embedding an integration builder in your product is going to take that competitive advantage to a whole different level. All right, moving on, number 5, powering your AI features. It's pretty hard to talk about integrations without mentioning AI. For B2B companies that are implementing AI, we typically see we typically see one of two main strategies. You may have an application that's primarily focused on ingesting data from multiple external sources, and then you're going to provide unique analysis on that data or maybe surface information from that data using custom-built AI models. For other companies, they're going to leverage pre-built models to just create co-pilot functionality alongside existing features that they already have in their core product. So in both of these, with both of these strategies, having up-to-date data from external sources is going to yield the best results. And good integrations are key to retrieving that data. For example, let's consider a fictitious company that builds software for customer support teams of manufacturing companies. And their secret sauce is their own AI model that automatically triages and prioritizes support requests It may offer real-time suggestions to the support team as they're helping their customers, predict future staffing needs, and so on. Well, a product like this is going to rely on near real-time integrations to feed their product the support requests that are coming or that are sourced from their CRM tools. If you're one of these types of companies, these AI companies, integrations take on a whole new level of importance. They're more than just a convenience for your users or for your customers. They're an absolute necessity. All right, earlier I mentioned that one of the big benefits of productized integrations is the improved ability to scale your integrations as your customers and just the overall total number of your integrations grow. However, there are other things that you're going to need to keep in mind as part of your company's integration strategy to make sure your integrations are scaling with your business. Probably the most important on that list is the need to build a core infrastructure that's not going to fall over as your integration volume increases. So as you're planning integrations, it's easy to be focused on the obvious things like the business logic. Meanwhile, you may be overlooking a lot of the things that need to happen behind the scenes to power those integrations. There's a lot to consider, but I've got a few of the most prominent things listed here. First on that list is webhook management. It's usually best practice to drive integrations by third-party webhooks if they're available. With webhooks, you're less likely to miss changes and you're going to receive them in a timely manner from those third-party applications. However, you got to have a system in place for receiving and executing on those webhooks. And sometimes this means receiving hundreds or thousands of updates for a given customer on a single integration in a given day or more. You got to make sure you have a system that supports that. Not all integrations support webhooks. When that's the case, your only option is to regularly poll for changes. Each integration may have its own polling schedule. So you're going to need to have a system in place that can reliably execute schedules across a magnitude of integrations. And it's important that both those polling and webhook-based integrations aren't missing a beat. If they do, you're going to miss data and your customers are going to tell you about it. Next thing on that list I have here is OAuth. OAuth. If you're building an integration that needs to connect to third-party systems, you need a way for your customers to authenticate into those systems. And most applications these days do support OAuth 2.0, and integrations with OAuth 2.0 are usually a great experience for your customers, but there's actually quite a bit that goes into implementing integrations that use it. It includes generating and receiving authorization URLs and then periodically refreshing tokens. So I got a couple other things listed on here too, like testing framework and on-prem connectivity. Testing integrations is a different beast than testing other features in your product. It only gets harder as you add more integrations. Same thing for on-prem connectivity. And for some industries, connecting to applications that are hosting to on-prem is a must. And I'm listing all of these things because it's not uncommon for B2B companies to basically have to revisit their implementation of these core integration concepts because they've started to fail once they hit a critical mass of integrations or combination or customers. So another way you can stay ahead of integration growth is getting your non-developers involved in the building of integrations. It's pretty hard to do that without buying a third-party tool with low-code building capabilities. But for many companies, it's probably worth it because it means that you're freeing up dev team to work on your core product. The last thing I have on this list as far as implementing a scalable integration strategy is alerting and monitoring. All products have bugs, but integrations are even more susceptible to issues because you're interacting with other companies' products. The best customer support is when you're proactively staying on top of issues for your customers. And when you have many integrations running for many different customers, good alerting and monitoring is the only way to make that happen. So number 6 on the list of things that we talked about here is why a lot of companies end up looking to third-party products like the embedded iPaaS to support their integrations. Products like this have the core infrastructure needed to build, deploy, and manage integrations, so you can focus on the building of integration logic rather than all the other things that I just talked about. All right, so we've talked about a lot of things today as it pertains to improving your integration strategy. But if there's one final thing that I can leave you with, it's don't put your integrations off in some dark corner of the room. Customer expectations and demand for integrations is only going to grow. You're going to miss out on big opportunities to improve your business if you're not treating your integrations like first-class citizens. In doing so, not only are you missing out on an opportunity to improve your product offerings, but you're also setting yourself up for some headaches as your customer base grows. All right, thanks so much for joining me today. If you're interested in learning more about building integrations, please check out our resources at prismatic.io. And thanks again to Product School for hosting. Hope you guys have a great day.